Smackdown this upcoming week is from Allstate Arena. They're back in the United States after a few weeks overseas. And the last time there was a big return in Chicago, it was CM Punk at the United Center. And it was a return that they didn't announce. It was a return they didn't say was happening. But, well, when the word gets out there and the tickets start to be sold, and the rumor mill starts to turn its wheel, it gets essentially inevitable. And that's what's happening here with WWE and CM Punk again, as he announced he will be in Chicago for SmackDown. And the rumor mill is pumping so hard and selling tickets so much based on this rumor that now it feels like WWE has to deliver, right? Similar to when CM Punk returned at Survivor Series in Chicago and he returned at, the Rampage show for AEW. It's so much so now that fans would be very let down because they've hyped themselves so much up. I'd like to see actually one of these companies actually not deliver and be like, hey, stop listening to the rumor mill. Stop reading the dirt sheets. It's your fault that you all tuned in at record numbers to expect something that we never said we're delivering. But in the end, I think WWE's going to deliver. AJ Lee, inevitably, it's probably most likely 99.9% going to be returning on SmackDown this week. There was the angle in which we saw a clash in Paris. Becky Lynch ends the show, joining Seth Rollins and the Vision faction, if you will, as something we thought was possible to happen a while ago. And finally it did. Very surprised, as we talked a little bit off air, that didn't have to do the Seth Rollins angle like we did before, where like he loses earlier in the night and then like wins later in the night kind of thing. So I'm surprised that we didn't have Becky Lynch fall to Nikki Bella, and then we think that she's gone and left and on her plane and heading home and we'll never see her again. And then later in the night reemerges, and that's what we're talking about. Either way, that's what we're talking about. But she was slapping around CM Punk this past week on Monday Night Raw pretty good. And CM Punk and WWE essentially in tweets made it very clear that she's going to regret doing that. So, AJ Lee, what percentage you put on that she'll be on SmackDown this week?
100%. Not a question about it. There's not even a doubt. I mean, I don't really care about the dirt sheets. I don't care what, some of those dipshits out there, put out. You just have to read the storylines, read between the lines. There was two options, and I discussed this with my cousin, who's he's also a big wrestling fan, and the two names we both talked about, Rhea Ripley, because they were having that conversation. There was a little they've been known to have a good good rapport, but the obvious answer is AJ Lee. I would be very, very surprised that it's anybody but AJ Lee. AJ Lee is still keeping herself, she still works out in the ring. Like there's been videos out there of her and CM Punk working in the ring together. Also, in the last couple of years, she was on a TV show called Heels, which had Stephen Amell, which is the main character, Jack Spade from that show. She was in it. She was working there. So she's, she still keeps herself pretty active. I think, you maybe even though you haven't seen her on TV doing anything, as of late, wrestling wise, I still think, her husband is CM Punk. They, maybe that's an activity they like to do, is something they like, something fun to do. They probably have a ring. They probably have a private ring because, I'm sure they're doing well enough to have that kind of stuff. And they probably, maybe it's part of their workout regimen. We don't know, but
I bet you they go to like a fitness center ring in Chicago, because I feel like they're like downtown. They are like kind of like Chicago, like downtown people. I don't know if they like own a home in Chicago. They might be like a downtown Chicago and then use like, one of there's a lot of like famous like gyms and things that are like for private people. Oprah Winfrey goes to those kind of places.
But I guess the point is like, that might be something they do as part of their workout regimen, that, because maybe that's been something that's been discussed in the background between the two of them and obviously WWE for a while. And maybe she's been keeping herself going, active wise. So I feel like it's not going to be a big deal. AJ was a good wrestler, when she was making her round, making the town, so to speak. So it's going to be fun to see. I can't wait to hear that, the infamous, beginning pop to her music, and the crowd's going to go nuts. And maybe maybe we'll see a shining wizard to Becky Lynch. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah. And what's crazy is I think AJ Lee right now has been out longer than CM Punk ever was. I'm going to look it up right now. When her last time in WWE was, it's crazy to think.
It's been many years.
So actually, kind of a surprise. She stayed in WWE for another year following CM Punk's departure. So her last time in WWE was March 30th, 2015. So she made it into the era, if you will, of of the WWE Network and things like that. It was actually the night after WrestleMania in San Francisco or San Jose or Santa Clara, wherever. WrestleMania 31, in which she was in a six-man tag match with Paige and Naomi against the Natalia and the Bella Twins. So if that doesn't tell you, because that's before obviously the more modern Divas Revolution that we're familiar with, she was officially let go. And she officially retired, if you will. She left the company on April the 3rd, a few days later, due to a neck injury. And said she quote unquote retired, but well, Edge retired and Paige retired and all these other people retired
Yeah, Daniel
as
Bryan
well.
retired. Yeah,
Daniel Bryan retired. Said he'll never be allowed to compete again. And then he competed many more times and in very great matches, might I add.
yeah,
Do you see AJ Lee doing anything more in WWE other than this quick little tag team story with CM Punk?
yeah. I do. I think she's gonna have a nice run. I feel it. I just have a good feeling about it. Where, look at what look what we're getting out of Nikki Bella. Recently, she's getting herself into a nice little run. I don't see. I think AJ Lee. No offense to Nikki, I think AJ Lee was a better wrestler than Nikki's ever been. And I feel like if AJ has been keeping up, in ring, like, behind the scenes, so to speak, I think she could have a healthy run. I mean, she's still pretty young. I feel like she's like around my age, our age, so to speak. So I think she could still go.
And that's why it's kind of a little more of a disservice. So you believe that Nikki Bella was going to win the U.S. The WWE Women's Intercontinental title
I thought she
at
would.
Clash of Paris, and now it seems a little more like maybe she should have, because of the fact that it's one of those like. When you're booking wins and losses in wrestling, it's like, what is it going to do for the winner? What is it going to do for the loser? It's one of those things. If it means more to the winner than it does for the loser, then, you should have that person go over, right? Maybe you could say the same thing about like Logan Paul and John Cena, right? Logan Paul, it would have been way more for him if he beat John Cena than it was for John Cena to beat Logan Paul on his way out the door. But with that being said, now it seems more like Nikki Bella should have won because with what Becky Lynch did, joining up with Seth Rollins later in the night, her loss would have been forgotten about in about 45 minutes. So the fact that she would have lost to Nikki Bella would have done big things for Nikki Bella, would have allowed her to stay in the company and maybe have little programs here for the IC belt, would have definitely put a lot of shine on the IC belt, which is a mid-card belt, because a legend is holding it. And did nothing to hurt Becky Lynch in the end because now she's involved in this storyline. And hey, I'm going to guess at WrestlePalooza when she's in this tag match, her IC belt isn't going to be on the line. I'm going to guess when she takes on AJ Lee in the future, her IC belt is going to be pretty irrelevant. So it could have done more for Nikki Bella now, at least for the short term, than it would do for Becky Lynch going forward. So I really feel like now she should have lost that match heading into WrestlePalooza.
Well, and the other thing is there could be a long play here where if maybe AJ Lee takes the belt off of her.
And that could keep AJ Lee in the company for a little bit longer.
I'm just saying.
Wrapping up this SmackDown, which we talk about AJ Lee, but another big thing happening with SmackDown is it's not necessarily being advertised this way, but a lot of people are saying based on the dates remaining and based on, internal rumors, this will be the final time we ever see John Cena on SmackDown. So my question to you, and I know obviously, Brock Lesnar's advertised to be on the SmackDown the night before WrestlePalooza. So that match seems to be all but official. Just make it already. But heading into, his final matches, do we see John Cena show up on another SmackDown, or is this his final appearance on the blue brand in company history for John Cena?
That's the $1 million question. I mean, it's hard to know because he has a certain amount of dates left and people are, the internet, I guess, Indiana Jones, like they're searching for the treasure, so to speak. They're trying to figure out, where and when. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if that's the case. So I know they've been talking about like trying to get Brock and Cena in the same area. Wouldn't it make for a hell of a SmackDown if we had the return of AJ Lee and then Brock Lesnar and Cena go at it on SmackDown? It could be a hell of a show this week.
I mean, that could definitely happen. I guess the question is John Cena going to show up for any more of those future SmackDowns?
That's the $1 million question.
I guess, obviously, it's hard to know because we don't know what his involvement will be, let's say, and I guess actually, the better question is where is SmackDown in Australia? Because is it SmackDown the night before? Because he is advertised, I believe, to be at that. But a lot of people are saying that he might not be at that. I want to look that up really quick. Yeah, it's SmackDown the night before is in Perth, and then he's obviously slated to be a part of Crown Jewel in Perth, and then Monday Night Raw is going to be in Perth. So 3 straight nights of WWE at the Rack Arena in Perth. But I mean, I definitely, now that I'm starting to see that, I definitely think that he's going to be a part of either that SmackDown the night before. Why not? He's already going to be there. There's no reason for him to not be as part of SmackDown, if you will. Maybe you try to get more people on the card, but at the same time, they try to fly less people to shows that don't need to be there. So they're not going to try to fly people just to maybe be on SmackDown if they can have John Cena already, who's going to be there anyways, kind of thing. If you're already in Perth, you're already flying there. Don't fly the Viking Raiders out just to be on SmackDown or just to be on Raw if you can have the people who are already there, kind of thing. Yeah. So I'm going to say no, this isn't his final time on SmackDown. It's advertised as such, maybe, and a lot of people internally might think so. But I think with the fact that he's going to be involved in every pay-per-view going forward, which is Crown Jewel, WrestlePalooza, and Survivor Series, as well as maybe even the SmackDown before Saturday Night's main event, which is going to be in Boston, I think we see more John Cena on the blue brand before the year is out. So I do think that he'll be on SmackDown, which is weird because that when the brand extension first came about is when he made his debut, and that's where John Cena was first seen on WWE programming, during that Ruthless Aggression era. But it'll be his final time in Chicago. I think that's pretty certain, and that's a pretty big deal because Chicago's a huge wrestling city. He's had a bunch of huge moments. Same arena. He won at WrestleMania 22 against Triple H in the main event, which was his first main event that he came in as champion. So, a big place for John Cena. His final time in Chicago at the Allstate Arena this upcoming Friday for SmackDown. That's for sure. Last time in Chicago. And hey, AJ Lee, maybe she's going to return and overshadow that time of John Cena. But either way, a big show, big SmackDown this week coming up.